Hey everyone, welcome back to a CI Chit Chat. Happy Tuesday. It's Election Tuesday. You may have heard. It's all anyone can think about. I'm ready for day after Election Wednesday and all days to come after that. I'm sure a lot of other folks are as well. But anyway, we're not gonna get into that too much here today. This is the CI Chit Chat. We talk about carbon intensity. CI is short for carbon intensity. We're able to measure a farm's carbon footprint essentially and give it a carbon intensity score. This is really important, especially for biofuels, but it's going to tie into all different verticals of ag. It's amazing here recently, a lot of those conversations really picking up on my side where people are looking at, hey, what are we going to do beyond biofuels? And what are we going to do beyond tax credits, beyond beyond just corn and soybeans too. And these same concepts going into all other verticals as well. So it's great that you're all here paying attention to what is happening with carbon intensity in regards to biofuels and in regards to tax credits. But just know that I am super bullish on carbon intensity integrating into all other verticals of ag as more companies look to quantify their scope 3 carbon footprint, which is their supply chain. More and more companies looking to tap into that supply chain, tap into where their products are coming from, and they want to quantify what is the carbon impact or the greenhouse gas impact of their supply chain. And a carbon intensity score or methodology is a standard system that they could utilize to be able to actually put some numbers to this, put some data to it, and then work to improve. Of course, work to improve their carbon footprint and lower their score over time. So even if you're not in biofuels, I think got to be paying attention to what is happening here within biofuels and be ready that this is going to impact all of our farms from here on out. And we're still waiting for IRS rules and final guidance. I don't know. Hopefully, we get through election day here, and therefore everyone in Washington D.C. can just get their stuff done and quit just having to keep playing politics. That we get through the vote and people can actually get their promises made, get things done, and then we'll see what happens between now and inauguration in January, and then see what happens after that. But going to be a lot of changes made, but still, this administration is saying that they want to get 45Z done between now and January. So, or at least preliminary rules out. So we'll believe it when we see it, but that's what we're hoping for. So, and in the meantime, we're running scores, making sure that everyone's ready to rock and roll. One of those guys that's ready to rock and roll is my buddy Nick here. Nick, thanks for hopping on and joining us. Nick's
Absolutely.
a dealer, but a farmer as well, a guy that we've been running in kind of the same circles for a number of years here now, soil health guy. And Nick, I'll let you maybe introduce yourself, introduce, what you do. Obviously, you've got a couple different hats that you wear, but introduce yourself first, and then we'll dig into it from there. We got a couple different questions and stuff that we want to get to today, but for any of you guys that are on, feel free to put your questions in the chat for me or for Nick or whatever you want to talk about. So, but Nick, appreciate you taking the time in this morning, and yeah, give a little intro here.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Mitchell. My name is Nick Sennert. I farm in Glen Grove, Iowa. That's up in northwest Iowa with my family. My bride and I have 4 kids. We raise 1,500 acres of diversified grain. Have been incorporating a lot more small grains in recent years, and
Yeah.
and that's been fun. In addition to doing the farming thing, I also run a egg service business, provide regenerative crop consulting, cover crop seed, as well as CI certification. So that's what
Maybe
keeps
talk.
me busy a lot of the time.
So talk about like your story into this space, Nick, and like, do you remember how you kind of got connected in with CI? And I mean, you've been following this for a long time, and you've been a dealer with us for a
Yeah.
long time now. Obviously, all of that's early stages, but like you were on board on this like pretty early on. Maybe tell that story if you remember it.
Yeah, I think Mitchell, you and I connected several years ago through soil health events and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And I remember cornering you at the end of one of those meetings, like, is this the one? And you were just kind of like, no, well, I'm still looking. I think we're not quite there. That was when they're 5 years ago, these carbon programs were just confusing and there wasn't clarity. And so yeah, we've kind of had relationship through that time. And I came to um, your meeting, I believe it was summer of 23, or was it summer of 22? Now I'm getting confused. It was either one of those when we finally got some rules on this 45Z and you really started to talk about the impact. So I began at that time, that I was midpoint maybe on my adoption of a lot of regenerative practices. And that kind of just arrived at the same time for me to accelerate adopting even more regenerative
Mhm.
practices, moving cover crops into a greater portion of my farm and prepping my own personal farm for this into that. Yeah, they've been late 23 planning for the 24 crop season so we
Yeah.
could capitalize on this. And as I worked through this and looked at the changes and the impact it could be on my own farm, I was like, well, why can't I just help other growers I'm already working with and others around me really hit the gas pedal to this thing from day one? And that's how I got connected to you and got working as a dealer with you. And here we are.
Yeah, I've been watching this carbon stuff. I started Continuum Ag back in 2015, and it's always been on soil health and stuff from that point. The Haney test, I know you've done some of that Haney test and stuff as well. But then it was, okay, can we monetize our story? That there's all these companies that say that they want a story to tell. They want to decarbonize. It's marketing, right? They want to have a story to tell to their consumers and tell to their shareholders. And it's like, hey, we've got amazing story to tell, and we've got data that we can back it up, but it all costs money. Doing the practices to create the story costs money. The data collection, the data connectivity, it all costs money. So, companies, if you want to tell a story, we'll help you do it. We got data to back it up, and it can be a legit, not just story, but hey, here's some real impact that we are making. But doing that connectivity, it takes some money. And so there's been a lot of companies that have tried to do that, by developing carbon credits and tell a story via a carbon reduction, using carbon credits, saying, hey, we're a company and we bought, 100,000 carbon credits. That's 100,000 tons of carbon that we're able to purchase to offset our footprint. That tells a nice story, but where did that carbon credit occur? Where did that capture occur? Was it actually fixing their supply chain, or was it something, halfway around the world? So a lot of these carbon credit programs, there's been just some vagueness and uncertainty in them. And I've been involved in that space since 2019. We've helped out multiple different companies that have done a lot of really great work in carbon credits. I've seen a lot of shift away from carbon offsets, though, and into carbon insets. I'm still very bullish on carbon insets and helping farmers to participate in those programs today. I think that's been great because there's more flexibility. Usually, the financials pencil out to be a little bit better, but mostly it's more flexibility in helping farmers to not be subject to long-term contracts and just ease the concerns of a farmer participating in one of these programs. But of course, carbon intensity is where I see all this going, that these companies, rather than buy a credit from somewhere, now they can actually just quantify what is the actual footprint of the products that they are actually physically purchasing, whether that be corn or soybeans or milk or whatever it may be. They can actually quantify the carbon footprint of that product itself and thus tell their real story with transparency and connectivity throughout the whole supply chain. Yeah, just seeing it all go that direction. And Nick, just like on your side, right? That it's these programs are coming and it incentivizes you to kind of go to the next step of adopting regenerative practices, adopting more of these soil health systems to be in position. And that's exactly why I'm trying to help to drive all these things, is that at the core of this, I don't necessarily care that much about these outcome programs. My real thing is I think more family farms need to be doing soil health practices because that's going to make them more profitable, more
Totally.
resilient for the long term. because these programs are gonna come and go. So if there's money in them today that's gonna get more farmers to adopt practices, get more farmers thinking about soil health, get more farmers, taking control of their cost of production, that sets up agriculture for a brighter future as these programs continue to change and the metrics change and the goalpost changes and the financial opportunity is going to change, but the soil health principles remain the same and sound agronomy remains the same and making sure that farmers actually are just profitable doing what they do. That has to be at the core of all of this. And I just haven't never seen a potential opportunity as big as carbon intensity with as big of a carrot as the tax credit could bring. And with just as it could be so simple if the rules are written the right way, it could be a very simple program. It's low risk and really inclusive to bring a lot of farmers to the table. So that's why I'm bullish on that. But Nick, maybe you talk about like you've looked into a bunch of different programs, and you've participated in a bunch of different things, looking at carbon offset credits, carbon insetting now, CI. How do you approach it from with your farmer hat on, or maybe with your consultant hat on as well?
Yeah. No, I appreciate the language you used of carrot because what a blessing to us as American farmers to have a carrot
Yeah,
rather than a stick at this point. And
fact.
so it's like we get rewarded to make the right choice to add regenerative practices, which helps our farms' resiliency, as you said, and helps profitability. It's the best of all worlds. And yeah, 45Z is the biggest thing to happen to the American farmer since the ethanol boom, and so it's great that we are prepping on the front end here to just hit the gas on day one once that
Yeah.
happens. Um, as far as other carbon programs, there was the ones of the last 5 years that would do a lot of look backing and would require a tremendous amount of paperwork. Some may think that this requires a tremendous amount of tracking and paperwork, but ultimately, once we get our systems, it's going to be pretty straightforward of just tracking what you do. So that look back was cumbersome, it was complicated, and very, very, very involved. I haven't talked to somebody who's been through one of those. I won't name programs, but where they have to come up with 5 to 10 years of stuff and said that was a fun experience. then you have those carbon inset programs. As we've been preparing and waiting here, I've participated in a couple of those with you guys, and those have been really straightforward and simple. I do love it's a year contract. Just tell your practices, get paid, and done. And then next year is a whole new game. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I,
Yeah,
I think we're in a good.
no long-term contracts. It's just, all right, here's what the program is for this year. Evaluate if it's going to work out and be the right thing, or, hopefully at some point there's more and more options on the table. But like, here's the here's the words on the page that are on the table now. Does it look okay? And yeah, as long as you're not locked into the same words on the page for all of eternity, meaning 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever that may be, which in farming, it's a long time to be locked in
A
on a
lot can
contract
change
when there's
for
so many
sure.
unknowns. But yeah, pretty simple. And yeah, and to your point, without having to do a whole bunch of look back and bring out all these old records that may or may not have much for relevancy on what you're doing here now or what the claim really is trying to trying to accomplish.
So Mitchell, with this carbon stuff, do, do you think this is, I mean, you've alluded to it, but this is going to go down to the consumer products. Do you think we'll have like a CI score on that bag of chips at the grocery store and our
No,
jeans, or
no,
where
I
does
don't
it
think we
end?
will. I don't think the consumer really cares that much about it. I think it's more so going to be like, Walmart, for example, right, as the big ones. If they are going to actually meet their sustainability goals, they are already pushing on their suppliers to be able to meet those goals. And I believe what they're going to end up basically having to do is start evaluating different suppliers based on their carbon footprint. And they're already asking them to do tracking. They're already asking them to do reporting and basically demanding that they lower their footprint. So Walmart's already like forcing their suppliers to comply just to be able to continue to sell through Walmart and be on the shelf at all. It's not about marketing a value-added story to the consumer. It's about getting on the shelf and playing the game. And by Walmart pushing on these companies, they've been looking at, okay, well, shoot, how do we comply? How do we tell a story to Walmart? They're not necessarily telling the story to the consumer, but they got to show something that they got to meet their Project Gigaton goals, you know? So if Walmart is actually going to decarbonize, those companies got to decarbonize. They've been trying to do carbon credits, mostly offsets, now kind of looking at insets, but they're not really getting the whole way. And that's where I think they need other options. They need more opportunity on the table. And that's where carbon intensity can actually get them to decarbonize further and get them to be a low carbon footprint player, which makes them more attractive to Walmart, gives Walmart a better story that they can go tell. So because Walmart and a lot of these companies overall, they just need to look at what was their carbon footprint in, call it 2020, then in 2021, in 2022, in 2023, 2024, 25, whatever. And if your report to that company is saying, hey, here was our score or here was our overall life cycle analysis, here was our carbon footprint last year versus here's our carbon footprint this year, it lowers the whole footprint of Walmart now. So just like on our farms, that here was the default score, or here was my score last year, or my footprint last year. Here's my footprint this year. Use that in your calculation as long as you're moving in the right direction and are showing progress or are contributing well to lowering their calculation, you're a more attractive player. But I think it's more so just about being able to be on the shelf. Maybe some of the um, shining star companies could get some additional marketing and stuff out of it, but I don't know that Walmart's really going to do a lot with it. It's the standard to pay to play the game there. But I think there'll be a lot of other companies that'll try to, pass along the cost to the consumer and do more marketing to the consumer, saying that they're, low carbon footprint or whatever. And we've seen, especially some of the meat packers here recently, try to make some of those claims of being lower carbon and they didn't have a lot of data behind it, and they're getting called out and they're getting sued for not having enough data behind it. So whatever the claim may be, whatever the reports may be, it just needs to have good data behind it and being able to show that they are making progress in the right direction. And I just think that carbon intensity can be an easier metric that can be utilized to really highlight that agricultural story more than uh, a carbon credit or amount of carbon credit reduction. Instead, look at what's your absolute carbon footprint versus just your change to your carbon footprint. Hopefully that makes some sense. Kind of talking in circles there, but
Yeah.
but it's just here's your footprint today. Here's how you came to that calculation. Here's how the math works, and then whoever can help you to improve that math equation, they're going to get a better seat at the table. So, and I think it's not just Walmart. I'm very bullish on the financial institutions driving it, the
Yeah.
banks, investment groups, those folks are more regulated, especially those backed by European money or regulated by the European banking system. They really have to be showing where their money's going and what is the climate impact of it. So I think a lot of this is going to be driven by those folks who are getting tremendous pressure on them to decarbonize. And the consumers have some impact on it, but I just think at the end of the day, most consumers are going to want whatever's cheapest and available, and uh, most aren't going to really care about what its carbon footprint is. But um, that's just my take. There will be people who, of course, do, and obviously there are people who would pay more for something that's has a low carbon footprint. But I think by and large, people want a cheap, consistent food supply chain. And that's, of course, the long term of all this is what does regenerative ag do? Well, it gets you more resilient yield, done, more consistently year over year, and actually does help to strengthen these supply chains and make them more resilient and keep the cost of food low for a long time, as long as there's transparency, of course. in those supply chains, and as long as the value is being equitably shared throughout the supply chains, then you can have consistent low cost of food. But
Yeah, to your point about the the packer having some claims and confusion, there seems to be a lot of confusion with labeling right now. Like
mhm.
people talking about regenerative stuff, but there is no like certification. So I was told that the USDA is working on standardizing some more things within labeling
Yeah,
around that space.
I don't
So
know
that could
what
be very interesting.
yeah, I mean, and that definitely falls kind of under some of that jurisdiction and stuff too, right? Or even like where, what labels of origin and stuff like that too. And
Mm.
yeah, on meat and stuff, right? Like what can actually be called meat, what can actually be called milk, some of
Oh
those
my word,
labels. That
the age we live in, huh?
that's a whole different rabbit hole. But yeah, Keith put in the chat, a lot of those companies that sell to Walmart, large operations, and they've got to add people to document and costs go up. Absolutely. And a lot of times these companies, they're hiring a lot more than one person to do these reports and keep track of these targets. It's a whole squad of people. And it's at the banks and stuff too, like absolutely absolutely ratcheting up those costs. And it does have to be passed along somewhere. But at this point, you've got to fill out these reports as a way to pay to play, basically. If you want to sell to Walmart, you've got to fill out their reports. It's going to have extra cost because of that. And they got to figure out how to eat those costs within their current profit and loss statements and squeezes everything, but it keeps you on the shelf. So I think there's some balance to that. But yeah, we'll see what keeps happening. Again, I think it's the concepts here under carbon intensity is why I'm so bullish. Tax credits give a huge carrot on it today. That's going to cause a ripple effect, but it's the concepts here of just more transparency, more data, and it all starts on the farm. So no matter what you're in, it all boils back to the farm, which kind of brings in Clinton's question here that came in. Um, so he has already fulfilled some contract, already has delivered some grain to a non-ethanol off-taker, so probably a local co-op or feed mill. Since there's no clear incentive to deliver to the ethanol plant this fall, is there still a reason to pursue CI certification on the fields um, that they already paid for in 2024? Is that essentially sunk cost? No, definitely. If you've especially if you've already paid our cost for CI certification, if you already paid us, definitely continue to go through it. And really, it boils down to we don't know what the rules are. So if you've already paid, definitely get your data entered, and we will help you to get it verified. And hopefully, there's an opportunity to monetize it with carbon intensity. That's great. Or there's a lot of other programs that are out there as well. Some of these carbon inset things that Nick and I were talking about earlier. Now, they don't all necessarily have unlimited enrollment opportunities. I wish they did. I wish we had more enrollment because I think we'd get a lot of farmers participating in these programs. The carbon inset stuff is the only programs that I've actually participated on my own farm. And so, I mean, I'm doing it myself. And that's where I encourage other farmers to do it as well. Everything that we've talked about here, everything that I've built it for my own farm. I'm trying to figure out how do I make money on this. Nick too for his farm. We're trying to figure out how do we actually participate in these programs ourselves. And then it just so happens, hey, we can help take this to other farmers and help them as well. But anyway, so if you've already paid for CI certification, absolutely get the data entered in. We'll help you to get it through verification. Now, if you don't have your data already in now, you've missed the boat for our tranche one of verification. Tranche one of verification is done right now. Farmers have already got their data in. There might be a couple loose ends that are being tied together, but if you don't have your data into topsoil by now, meaning everything except for yield, you missed the boat on tranche one. We will do a tranche two. I'm anticipating still like March of next year, but we're going to wait and see what happens with the actual 45Z rules, and then we'll pull together all that data. So if you've entered your data already and you're in on tranche one, great. We're going to get you verified, rock and roll. If you've already paid, start getting your data into topsoil. Just know it's probably going to be March or so before we actually submit it for verification. But maybe there'll be other opportunities that come about with other carbon inset stuff or other ways you could take money off the table. Now, you won't be able to do CI and a carbon inset program. At least at this point, we have to anticipate you won't be able to double dip and do both. Again, we don't know the final rules, but uh, what's been laid out by the IRS before, they've indicated that you're not going to be able to double dip. And then for farmers who haven't paid yet and haven't enrolled in CI certification, of course, we would love to get you started on this again for the same thing. Hopefully, there's opportunity with CI. We should. The law is the law. Like they're supposed to be getting this out. So the law is the law. Get your data organized. We'll help you do it. But also know that um, just have your data in place so that whenever the paperwork comes across your desk, you're able to make the right decision for you. Now, the other piece that I would note here as well, especially for folks who have already delivered grain or already have grain on contract, one of the biggest pieces that needs to be solidified with the rules is 45Z going to be a book and claim, or is it going to be a mass balance or direct connectivity where your data and your grain have to stay together? So if it is book and claim, the grain that you already sold, as long as you haven't sold the carbon impact of that grain, you still are likely going to be able to sell that CI certificate to any biofuel producer in 2025. So for Clinton's example, he already delivered grain, but if 45Z is a book and claim, he still is going to be able to utilize that story, that data about how that grain was produced and sell his CI certificates into the market or go and create carbon credits with an inset or offset program. And this is okay. There's a good question that just came in from Jody to me here directly. But we really want this to be a book and claim program that'll give farmers like Clinton opportunity to sell their grain locally, sell it into feed or whatever vertical is their local market, and then be able to help decarbonize ethanol through the book and claim. Be by far the biggest opportunity to scale and to really drive the adoption of more soil health practices. Okay, last
Mitchell,
thing. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
what's your vibe at this point? If you're a betting man, whether it's going to go book and claim or the other route, or is it
It's
just totally
very
just a
much
ticker?
toss up
Okay.
50-50, right? It depends on what poll you're looking at, right? If we're gonna bring it back to election day here.
Well
Really,
played.
you don't know until it's done. We don't know.
Gotcha.
But we listened to all of the feedback sessions. I put out material about the USDA feedback sessions, and it was definitely most folks were pushing for use a book and claim, especially folks within biofuels, within most of the trade organizations. Most of what I would say are voices that I think are going to resonate the loudest at USDA. Most of them were saying, "Hey, let's do a book and claim." So that was very encouraging. And again, we just see book and claim as the best opportunity to get mass participation and to get the market off the ground as fast and as big as possible. But long term, your carbon CI certificate probably shouldn't be sold randomly. Long term, I do believe your grain and your data will stay connected and we'll have more transparent supply chains. And whoever actually buys my physical corn will also buy the digital attribute with it, and they will be able to tell that story. But the systems to be able to really do that, we have, and we've developed some of that with our partners, but it's definitely like the tougher scenario. Book and claim would be a lot more scalable, and I think and there's precedent for that too in the ethanol industry. The whole renewable fuel, the RIN system is all done via book and claim. Like there's some precedent in some systems for it to go that way. So we'll see. But we need them to use the GREET model and likely go ahead and do a book and claim. That's really what we're wanting the rules to do. Jody put in a good question here. Can a grower do Practical Farmers of Iowa, the cover crop program, and carbon intensity? And it's perfect that we got Nick on here because Nick and I have had this exact conversation. The real quick answer is it depends on what your contract actually says. In the contracts I've seen with Practical Farmers, their program, it's not necessarily a cost share program like it says. There actually is a line item in there that says you can't be in any other carbon credit program because they are claiming a carbon credit or a carbon reduction on your farm. So the real answer is Depends on what the contract is, but likely you cannot do the Practical Farmers cover crop program and do the carbon intensity program. Nick, I don't know how much you can talk about your story. There is some gray area, um, but for the most part, most of the contracts that are out there, the Practical Farmer program and a lot of these other climate smart grant programs, they actually are carbon credit programs, and you can't stack.
Yeah, I would just be sure before I sign that I would read the fine print and engage with the PFI organization on is this claiming any carbon or is it not, and that'll give you your answer of whether you can go forward with it. But that's really important to note that we cannot stack carbon programs. It would be a bummer to take $10 instead of 150, on if you're selling carbon on that on your acre that year.
Yeah, it would be awesome to be able to stack, but it boils down to look at the fine print in the contracts. And if the contract says something along the lines of you can't participate in any other carbon or outcome-based program, that's really the key. So if it's an outcome-based program, that would basically disqualify you from carbon credit, carbon offsets, carbon insets, carbon intensity. Those are all outcomes. And so if you're in a program that says you can't be in any other outcome-based program or any other I forget what some of the words in the PFI one was, but some along the lines of outcome-based programs or carbon quantification programs. If it says that, yeah, you can't stack. I did just get a last kind of thing here. I got another private message about the ADM CI program. We had encouraged farmers to go ahead and look into that. ADM is paying up to 8 cents a bushel for your data. Now that's up to 8 cents. It depends on your CI score, and there's a little bit of funkiness there. But I got hit up yesterday as well. I went through the initial enrollment process. I don't anticipate that I will actually deliver anything to ADM, so I don't know how far I will get through the process. I ended up just with soybeans on my farm, my personal farm this year. Now, Dad's operation is different, but yeah, if you're being hit up to supply some data and you already have data in Continuum's program in Topsoil, we would love to help to make sure that data enrollment process goes easy for you. So if you're being hit up and you already have your data in Topsoil, just let us know. Contact me or contact your Continuum Ag representative, and we'll help you to make sure that that's as smooth as possible for you. As long as you have all your data in Topsoil already, that is. And I think part of this being we need to have our options on the table, and I think that's what a lot of this boils down to. Maybe to take things home, I think carbon intensity and 45Z is the biggest opportunity. It's by far the biggest carrot. We just don't know when it's actually going to come through. But at this point, the IRS still has not said otherwise, that this isn't going to be anything other than on January 1. And the rules that they've put out, which the latest stuff was back in like May, is still indicated January 1 as when they're starting this thing. So it's unfortunate that we're in this kind of limbo period, but um, we got to have our options on the table. So whether it be an ADM program or a practical farmer program or other carbon insets or carbon intensity, it's about having your data organized. It's about being able to sign on the dotted line when it becomes apparent of what to sign on the dotted line. And that's why I like, our approach that with us, you're not locked in or signed to anything. We're just helping you to manage your data, get it organized, and we want to help you to get it monetized and whatever the best program is going to be for you. Um, if the PFI payments are on cover crops only ahead of beans, does that disqualify you from carbon programs payments ahead of corn? Probably not. That might be the caveat. So if you're planting cover crop here this fall ahead of 2025 soybeans, you're probably okay. Now, carbon intensity works for soybeans as well. The math just isn't quite as amazing as on corn, but it would be a carbon credit program. So like some of these carbon inset stuff we're talking on soybeans where carbon insets can be around $20 an acre, kind of as an average rule of thumb. You got to just keep your options open. So just know, what are you actually signing up for? What length of time are you locked in for? But no, it should be that cover crop is associated with that crop that will be planted following the cover crop, and that crop would not be able to be double dipped on into another program. But Still it boils down to know what you're signing up for, and happy to have more of those one-on-one conversations too. But, all right, Nick, I went over time. Imagine that, like I normally do. But Nick, any kind of parting takes? We went super fast here today, I feel like. But any final
No,
thoughts?
thanks for having me. Just go get your scores done, and we'll remain bullish.
Oh,
We're almost there. We're gonna know stuff soon. So
we're gonna know soon. The light at the end of the tunnel is coming in soon, and hopefully it works out the way that we need. But like, gosh darn, just ready for that day to be here, so we actually know what's going on. But yeah, you can get your CI score for free at topsoil.ag. If you're in Nick's area, especially, definitely hit him up. He can help you out getting it too, or any of our reps can. Topsoil.ag for free CI scores. Next week, no CI Chit Chat. I've got a guest coming on next week. So we're going to do a Topsoil webinar next week. I think we've announced that's going to be Tim Winters from Western New York Energy. So one of the ethanol plants we've been working with, it's already piloting this. So that's going to be a lot of fun to get one of the CEOs from an ethanol plant on here talking about their program. We also have a webinar here this week. I think did Diana get that in? Yeah. So Wednesday at 10. Wait, what is that one? So we'll have our folks coming from the Global Farmer Network is I believe on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. So Mary is the director of the Global Farmer Network. I just hosted a group from Japan on my farm yesterday that are associated with this Global Farmer Network crew. So want to talk about telling our story at a global scale here. So join us for that. It's in your email as well. So anyway, thanks everyone for hanging out with us here this morning. Have a great Tuesday. We'll see you on Thursday and then on the webinar, No CI Chit Chat next week. See you later, Nick. Thanks everyone.
see you.